Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks Kicks.
Boy, just like that, we're back. We're getting set for UFC Kansas City, Holloway versus Allen in that main event. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen, Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials, Matt Allen FNP. Matt, we got to head over into the chat.
How's it going, everybody?
Paul Stefani's out there, Chris McDowell, Prince Vegeta's son, TC, Craig Hart, Artem MMA, Kate DeMercy, no one really, Eric Cote, Branch above, everybody's hanging out over there. No one really saying, let's get into it. TC flew to Kansas from Houston by myself for this fight.
Nice.
So, some real dedication.
I mean, if you're going to travel for any fight night, I think this is the type of fight night that you would travel for. Anytime Max Holloway is fighting, it's normally for a title or for a number one contender spot. So the fact that we're getting him against Arnold Allen, I think is one of the better fight night main events we're going to get of the year.
Clay saying, Ola Kurtar, sorry about your raps, guys.
That was the most frustrating loss I've ever watched in my life. Short story to tell. Our dad, I was texting with him, right? He's not a big basketball guy, but he asked me what the score was. And I sent him these words and I felt terrible sending them. I said, the Raptors are up by 12, but the game is a lot closer than the score would suggest. And that was the last text I sent. Next thing you know, the Raptors lost. I'm very upset. Hopefully some major changes in the offseason.
We'll see if Tatum and Brown can carry the Celtics all the way. Matt, it's Jackie Robinson Day today in baseball. So everybody's wearing number 42. Big day there. Jay's playing the Rays as we speak, and it just got started. So Matt, when we have a look at this card, I mean, a lot of people are excited about this main event. We'll throw it on over to the fight of the night screen, because right there, I mean, Holloway versus Arnold Allen in this, main event. It's 5 rounds. It's Arnold Allen's second shot at 5 rounds. His last time out was the first time for a 5-round fight, not just in the UFC, but overall in his career. Took on Calvin Kattar. That funky knee injury where he jumped the wrong way in the first round. Second round, just one kick and he drops down. It was kind of unfortunate. He didn't really even want to talk about it in his corner, round 1 to round 2, so it just sucks that it ended that way. But when you look at Max Holloway, tough and durable as they come, you don't want to see a Kattar-style injury. You don't want to see it like Tom Aspinall when he fought Curtis Blades. We want to see 2 guys go out there, 2 of the best guys at featherweight right now. But for Arnold Allen, again, another giant test. He took on Dan Hooker. He finished him fairly early. He took on Calvin Kattar. We didn't get to see a big sample size. Max Holloway even alluded to it this week, Wednesday, at that kind of media scrum. This guy's good, but we don't know exactly how good he is.
Exactly.
We don't get big sample size.
And it is wild, because that's been the story about Arnold Allen. It's, hey, I look really impressive, and then I don't really fight for a whole year, and then I look really impressive when I resurface. So his recent string of success, although there have been some injuries peppered in there, it has been really nice to just see him be consistent, because even though the Calvin Kattar fight ended in injury, he was looking pretty good up until that initial injury did happen. But like you said, there's still so many what-ifs. Now, if he could go out there and beat a guy like Max Holloway, I'm pretty sure that answers maybe not all of the what-ifs, but at least 90% of them. So this is the perfect test for a guy like Arnold Allen. And the one thing that I guess I'll just let the cat out of the bag, I'm curious about how much the weight cut is affecting Max Holloway at this stage of his career, because he is a big guy, he is getting old, and that's been a story around him for a long time now.
Max Holloway looks now, and this picture doesn't do it justice, he kind of looks like when Billy, I wanted to say Billy Idol, but when Billy Joel was in the studio writing the song Down Easter Alexa, he was picturing a guy like Max Holloway, because he has gotten weathered between the last number of fights. Our second pick for fight of the night, Matt, and there's a lot of really good ones. Royval Nicolau, I think that's gotten a lot of shine this week, but this one doesn't. TJ Brown taking on Bill Algeo, and again, I said it at the start of the week. I have a hard time trying to pick this one, and I've had a hard time with both of these guys. And I took it on the chin and said that. We both had a pretty hard time picking their fights. But when you look at TJ Brown, when you look at Bill Algeo, can they scrap? You're darn tootin', and they get into some tillies, so I know you're excited about this one. I know we both are.
It's an interesting fight, and I think we're going to get a lot of scrambles from it, and that's always going to result in a fun fight, because both guys are dangerous on the feet, and both guys are dangerous on the mat. I think Brown's going to have to go for quite a few takedowns in this fight, just to make Bill Algeo start to question what his own game plan is, so he's not too comfortable on the outside. But I think once the fight hits the mat, it will be just as exciting as it is on the feet, because both guys are great grapplers.
Yeah, they both are. Both guys Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Bill Algeo out of Algeo MMA, and for TJ Brown, West Side, he used to train at Glory, which now pick a Splinter Cell gym and you get to join that one. But Matt, when we do have a look at this one, if this is the first time that you've tuned in with Fight Night Picks question marks, question mark kicks. See, we struggle with the wording, thinking about baseball. But when you look at this one, we go all the way down to the bottom of the card. We break it down one more time. We had 5 fighters that were switching weight classes. They all made it successfully, but one fighter missed weight, and she has a hard time making weight in all of her fights. We do have a big-time main event, so again, we do thank you for joining in. If you want to toss a like, that is much appreciated. If you want to hit up that super chat, that is as well. We'll do our best to hit up the chat over there. A lot of people still talking about that fight in the main event between Holloway and Allen. So we'll pop in and out of the chat. We'll throw it on down to the first fight on the card, Matt. I don't curse on these shows, so I'm going to keep it PG. But Joselyne Edwards 2 fights ago beat Ramona Pascual. Almost got finished in the first round. Rallied in the second round and the third round. Had a hard time making the weight. The fight was supposed to be at bantamweight. They popped it on up to featherweight. She made featherweight successful. Her next fight, her last fight out, 137.5. For this fight, last fighter to weigh in at the end of the window, 136.5, was not going to cut the extra half a pound. What are we doing? Do you think if she wins this weekend, do they cut her or do they keep her around?
I don't really... they'll probably cut her. I gotta be Joselyne Edwards missing weight doesn't occupy a lot of real estate in my brain. I didn't really, think she was going to make it. Not that I assumed she was going to miss weight, but it has been a constant story throughout her career, and I do think the size might play a factor for her, because she is going to be the bigger fighter anyways against Pudilova, so I will be curious to see how much that physicality will be able to help her, but I gotta stick with what the prediction was at the start of the week. I think the range finding of Pudilova, and I don't mean that with her striking necessarily, but her ability to clinch, make this fight ugly, crash some of the distance that Edwards can use effectively. I think Pudilova can have success, but it's a really close matchup. Don't put any money on a fight like this where one fighter misses weight, and it's a close matchup anyways. I just gotta go with what I said earlier on in the week, which is Pudilova is the more well-rounded fighter. I think she will be able to find some takedowns, but I still worry about her at range with a fighter like Edwards.
When you do look at this one, 68% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Joselyne Edwards to get the win. Again, she is on a 2-fight win streak. Both these women have wins in the UFC over Wu Yanan, one by decision, one by finish, and that was for Lucie Pudilova, who lost 4 straight in the UFC, and I know a lot of people throughout the week in the comments section, they were pretty negative about Pudilova. Well, isn't she the one that lost to Justine Kish? 110% she did at flyweight. Goes outside of the UFC, 4-1. The lone loss was to Toledo Bernardo, who was in the UFC. Picked up a big win over Cupcake Matt, Sarah Morris, in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. So a pretty big one right there. Clay is saying over there, not being able to cut the last half pound portends ill for her coming fight. You got to think she would have given up the purse if she could have cut the last half a pound. She lost 20% of her purse on that one. Is definitely disappointing. So again, the fans, Matt, going with Joselyne Edwards in the matchup. The odds, Pudilova is actually the favorite in this matchup. Open -175, -138 right now is Pudilova.
I feel like we both have a moderate amount of success picking women's underdogs in the opening bouts of cards. We've both done it recently on some, so I'm gonna stick with Pudilova. Again, I worry about her at range, and if she's not able to complete some of those takedowns, she might get lit up on the outside, because her striking is effective when she's able to throw a lot of volume to overwhelm her opponent, but if you just stand on the outside and don't really respect her power, you're going to be able to blast your own strikes in there. So I think there is a very simple game plan for Edwards to win this fight. I'm not discounting that whatsoever, but I do have Pudilova in the matchup.
I made a mistake and NHJ caught it. It's cheesecake, not cupcake, for a fighter that nobody remembers in Sarah Morris. Apologies to the West Coast Sarah Morris, and you, NHJ, we thank you for that. In this one, can Pudilova get the grappling working? That's really the big question mark. I know Edwards has had these recent camps with the Shevchenko sisters. If you do look at it, I think Pudilova can get caught in those in-betweens where she does that kind of like herky-jerky, keeps those hands out there. It's not like a mummy defense, but she does keep her hands out there quite a bit. And Joselyne Edwards throws teeps and front kicks. Don't be surprised if Edwards lands a big-time front kick and getting a win. Pick'em MMA saying I think Edwards will get the decision. I'll stick with my original pick of Pudilova. I won't question it all that much, but if you guys have Edwards, let us know down below in the chat. We'll move forward to the next matchup.
It's a very close fight.
Now, a lot of people, Matt, and I threw it out there on my Twitter, I want to thank you guys for checking that video that I made on Gaston Bolanos. It is the biggest video in that series of keeping score. So I do thank you for that. Bolanos making his UFC debut against Aaron Phillips. I got to take a second. When you look at both of these guys, Matt, I got to say this. Gaston Bolanos was a star with Bellator.
He was.
That's not crazy to say. And he wasn't beating a high-level competition over there. Even his win over Daniel Carey. Like, Carey beat Bolanos, and then they went, hey, you want to fight Aaron Pico? And he got lit up. So when you look at it for Bolanos, I think he's a really good fighter. In general, he's a great Muay Thai fighter. He got rocked over there. He got rocked in MMA, and he got rocked by, like, non-named fighters, like, non-big name fighters.
Yeah.
So for Bolanos, the striking defense is rough. And when you look at it for Aaron Phillips, Prince Vegeta's son, did I edit that? You're darn tootin' I did. When you look at this fight, Matt, Aaron Phillips, I've seen him get rocked in the regional scene. I've seen him get rocked in the UFC. I've seen his takedown defense be a problem. Phillips isn't going to have to contend with somebody that's taking him down in a fight against Bolanos. And if they purely strike against one another,
it'll be a great fight.
Phillips Taekwondo plays well in MMA, and Bolanos' Muay Thai plays in MMA. I could definitely see Phillips getting an upset win in this fight, but it feels like a little bit of a setup for Bolanos.
I gotta be completely honest. I don't think either guy is the highest ceiling in the UFC.
No.
I think they're gonna result in extremely fun fights. Neither guy will ever be in one of those fights where they're really hesitant from the outside and we're just gonna get a boring 30-27 one way or the other. But I do think that their ceilings will be limited because for Bolanos, he's a guy who will give up defense in pursuit of offense, and that is just talking about the thing that he does exceptionally well. Then you have to take into account if he ever fights a primary wrestler or someone who has great jiu-jitsu. Those are just other things he's going to have to contend with. So I think as he does move up the division, he will start to face more and more roadblocks, but I think this is an extremely fun fight to have him in for his UFC debut. We're going to have a lot of fun striking exchanges between both these guys. I think the leg kicks of Bolanos is going to tilt this in his favor because if he can slow down the movement of Phillips, it should help him a lot because if Phillips can kind of tap away, lunge in from long distance, he could be able to find the chin of Bolanos and be able to drop him because he does have good straight shots down the middle, and that's something that Gaston in the past has been hurt with, but I do think the leg kicks over time is going to diminish some of that movement and then just help him be more available for Bolanos to be.
I would assume somebody like Aaron Phillips, a guy that trains out of the Louisiana, Texas region, he's got his own gym, Head Kicks MMA. I would assume he's going to go in and try and grapple in this one. We saw Bolanos struggle with the takedowns against a guy like Solo Hatley, but Hatley's a good wrestler in his own right. And even in that fight, if you were scoring it at home, round 1, round 2, lots of damage for Bolanos to the takedowns. Round 3, Bolanos looked pretty good. It was a split decision win for Hatley, if I'm not mistaken, but it was a really chintzy type of fight. Do you value the takedowns and the ground control? The majority of the judges did in that one. For Bolanos, he fought exactly a year ago today against Scary Carey. Knocked him out pretty darn quick. So if we have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes on this one, 63% going Bolanos, 37% going with Aaron Phillips. Both these guys get hit. Both these guys get rocked. I'll go with Gaston Bolanos, but guys, the thing that really is kind of scary, Aaron Phillips is a bantamweight. This is Gaston Bolanos' first ever fight at bantamweight. I thought he looked decent on the scale, but I do struggle with the, switches in weight when you're 30 years old to decide to drop down to 135. That drop from 45 to 35 is pretty significant. How will the chin hold up for a guy that's fought at super lightweight in the past? We'll find out, but both of us in this one going with Gaston Bolanos. Matt, we move into our next fight. Bruna Brasil taking on Denise Gomes, or D. Gomes. When you look at this fight, Matt, for D. Gomes, this is somebody that's fought at bantamweight, at flyweight, and at strawweight, but strawweight's really especially
she's not big.
At 5'2", she's not that big. She did look like she gave up quite a bit of size at the ceremonial weigh-ins when they faced these two off. You look a little bit like Bruna Brasil with the shirt and the hair combo, so I'll let you kind of talk about this one. When you look at somebody like Bruna Brasil,
I talked about that a lot at the start of the week too, was the size advantage Brazil had. And that really did hammer at home with seeing these two face off. It was like, oh wow. Like, I know Gomes has fought at other weight classes, but like you mentioned, she really does fit into this division much better than she would like bantamweight. Brazil is a massive fighter, and she is a fighter who's comfortable at striking at range, and I do think that's important because if she was a fighter like Bahamondes is a guy we talked about this a lot with, so it's just fresh in my mind, but he's a rangy striker who gets a lot of his good work done up close. Brazil's a fighter who can stay on the back foot and just counter effectively, and I think that will be her game plan throughout this matchup. Now, if Gomes can try to crowd the distance, get her up against the cage, limit some of that movement, then of course she does have great flurries and she can land some of her own. I just think the movement and some of those long range strikes are going to be a little bit too much for Gomes to get past.
Branch above saying Gomes is decent on tough. Was she on tough? I don't remember her being on tough. Craig Hart, Bruna Brasil was done to fight with a name like that. Yeah, I mean, she was a soccer star. That was kind of her background. Then she got involved into the mixed martial arts. When you look at Gomes, though, somebody that trains out of an interesting gym, we know the lineage with Carol Hossa. She fights next weekend in a fight that means absolutely nothing in the women's featherweight division against Norma Dumont. Why even bother? But when you look at this matchup, Matt, we have a look at the fan vote at Fight Night Picks. And, 69% going with Bruna Brasil to get the win. For me, I'm going to go with Bruna Brasil. Again, if Gomes can go in there, make it dirty, make it gritty, forehead against the chest, and just try and land some of those big hooks like we've seen her do in the past, she could have a lot of success. I mean, she's able to cut the cage quite well, cut it effectively with hooks and not with foot position. And she tends to have decent, 3-round cardio. Super chat with Malone Hart. Who are the fighters y'all want to win most on this card? Even if you don't think that they will. All right, that's an interesting question.
Want for like storyline purposes?
Iwan Kutsalaba to get off the schneid.
I want Chris Gutierrez to. Because Chris Gutierrez has beat a lot of vets so far, kind of on this rise in his career. And I'm not saying beating a guy like Pedro Munoz is going to be kind of the big capstone to his career. But if he can then beat Pedro Munoz, there's nothing but big fights on after that. You know, if you lose to Munoz, then we don't really know where he's going to go after that. But I think a win against a guy like Munoz kind of solidifies his place in the top 10. So there's my answer.
Morphatrix saying the answer to that is Clay Guida. He just keeps pulling out those wins, though, like rabbits out of hats. But when I look at it, yeah, for me, Kutsalab, he's going to get off that losing streak. I mean, 3 straight. He's been finished. He's going out there against Tanner Boser, came at 203 pounds.
Oh, looking thin.
It was really weird. So for me, I'm going to go with Iwan Kutsalaba. The comment there from T-Way threw me off. Let these fellas do their stuff and then ask the questions after. If you throw money at us, we're going to answer those questions, T-Way. So, hey, throw some money at us. Matt, both of us going with Bruna Brasil in this one. We'll move forward. Groovy Lando Vannata training out of Elevation for this one, not at Jackson Wink. He's coming up against a very interesting Mexican prospect in Daniel Zellhuber. Zellhuber had all that shine.
He did it.
Shine's gone. It's gone bad. Because the thing that we saw to Zellhuber with Lux on the Ultimate Fight, or not the Ultimate Fighter, see, that comment earlier threw me off. On Dana White's Contender Series, from what we'd seen from a guy like Zellhuber, he gets hit, he goes sicko mode, and then he gets himself into the fight. Even if he's on the back foot to start, you hit him, and then he starts to march forward. He gets hit, he gets dropped. Like Zellhuber, and I see it there from K. DeMercy, Zellhuber was huge. You can see it there with that height difference. He definitely has a decided advantage that way. When you look at it for Vannata, definitely has a wrestling advantage over a guy like 100%. Zellhuber, even though, as I said at the start of the week, Zellhuber, his takedown defense is predicated on, I'm long, I'm strong, I can sprawl. And then
that his Tinder bio, do you think? I'm long, I'm strong, and I can sprawl?
I'm not talking about Tinder on the show anymore after the whole hand jibber earlier on with Gutierrez. But Matt, when you look at this one, I mean, for Zellhuber, he has all of those assets. He's a good striker from range. He likes to kind of close that gap. And he gets stronger as these fights go on. Well, the first 12 fights of his career he did, except for the fight against Trey Ogden. So I have a hard time with this one. Matthew Moore saying Vannata just isn't a hard worker. Are you kidding me, man?
I don't know him. Who cares? This is my whole thing about Vannata. I have no idea where he fits into the division anymore. Like, I genuinely don't, because at one point in his career, he was kind of an overachiever, and everyone really appreciated that about him. But I do think those really difficult fights that he had earlier on in his career is like Tim Lincecum. Tim Lincecum was awesome, but he threw way too many innings, and then his shoulder just, like, couldn't take it later on. For Vannata, he had a lot of those crazy fights earlier on in his career, and I just wonder how much tread is left on the tires.
Vannata won 4 bonuses in his first 4 fights. Tim Lincecum won 2 Cy Youngs
No, I know
and
it's
2
not.
World Series.
But guys who got overworked when they were younger.
All right.
Do you remember a lot of guys who got overworked when they were younger who aren't really good? No,
T-Way,
exactly.
T-Way threw up the money, so T-Way, you get the shouts.
That's a weird problem to have with that. He burnt really hot early in his career. I wonder how much he has left. It's not that I still think Daniel Zellhuber is going to go on and have some wild run, but I do think he has enough to beat a guy like Vannata at this stage of his career.
With what?
I think his striking's going to be good enough. Vannata's been clipped and been hurt a lot throughout his career, and I know it's been by heavy volume strikers, guys like Bobby Green and whatnot, but he is available to be hit, and Zellhuber does have enough power, I believe, to hurt a guy like Vannata.
I do appreciate that T-Way with that super chat. 72% of the fans going with Zellhuber to get the win over groovy Lando Vannata. I think Vannata mixes it up, makes it a little dirty, and stands in the pocket, and mix in his wrestling. And I think for Vannata, that can be a big key. We saw Lucas Almeida cut that cage, throw those nasty hooks. Now, Almeida has ungodly power, and he has a really weird chin. Like, it's there and it's not. So, for me, I do like Lando Vannata in the matchup as the underdog shot. With Daniel Zellhuber, he went from about a minus 400 favorite to, let's have a look and see what he is right now. Because, honestly, for the fans, I don't remember. He's only a slight favorite in the matchup. Open minus 175, minus 130. If you like Zellhuber, let us know. Vannata got, what? Pantses? Bet the house against him? I have no idea what that means, Jason. I seem like I'm super against the comments, but Jason, what are you saying? I appreciate the super chat nonetheless. But we'll move forward, Matt, into our next matchup. Gillian Robertson taking on Piera Rodriguez. And I should say, we back up 1. Lando Vannata coming up from featherweight back up to lightweight. Not that big of a conversation. It's nothing crazy. Vannata went 0-2 at featherweight. 1-1. He beat Mike Grundy and he lost to Charles Jourdain. Gillian Robertson, first time that she's moved down to strawweight since she came into the UFC from the Ultimate Fighter. She had fought somebody, came in at 116.5, so she had missed weight before that at strawweight. I thought she looked pretty good at 115, and I know we said at the start of the week this was going to be a major point of conversation coming into this on Question Mark Kicks. So what were your thoughts on her, making the weight successfully?
It was nice to see her make the weight successfully. I'm still concerned about how her gas tank is going to look with this weight cut, just because her gas tank was such a big asset at 125. She'd be able to out-grapple.
Sorry. I have to make a correction there. He got pantsed in his last fight by Charles Jourdain. That did happen. Sorry, continue.
But I kind of forget where I was. I still have Piera Rodriguez is basically the root of what I was going to say, because for Rodriguez, the last 2 opponents she's faced in the UFC have sort of kind of got her ready for Gillian Robertson. Now, it will come down to, can Robertson use her, not only just grappling acumen, but her physicality at this weight class, because you move down a weight for a reason. You normally don't move down a weight to just be average size there. So if Robertson can start to use that physicality and really work her wrestling, she could have success in the matchup, but I still do believe Rodriguez is the more skilled out of the 2.
Okay, one has the most submission wins in women's
flyweight history. I know, but okay,
history.
You can't just look at numbers and judge everything off numbers. You have to look at who they did the numbers against.
One boxes on the back foot in the majority of her fights.
That's fine. I still think the one who's boxing on the back foot is going to win this fight in MMA. We can't just look at stats and take everything from them. Like, stats can lie to you. Robertson has a lot of submission wins, but it's not like she's going out there submitting a lot of crazy high-level fighters, and she can get out-grappled herself. We've seen it in the past.
Gillian Robertson, for me, I mean, she is an amazing grappler, and she has great jiu-jitsu for MMA. If you did see that with that Fury Pro Grappling 6. She was in that main event, the super fight against Rose Namajunas, made quick work of her in that matchup. When you look at Robertson, I think the wrestling is improving. She kind of needed to wait for her opponent to make a mistake in a lot of her fights previously. She goes in for that high crotch single leg, and then if she's not able to get it, she's back at open space, and her boxing defense is kind of hands out, not necessarily mummy style, but she gets hit a lot because she doesn't move her head. But where that wrestling's improved with the goat shed, it really has helped her in a lot of these fights. For me, with Piera Rodriguez, you look at some of the recent losses that Robertson has, it's not necessarily 2 opponents of Rodriguez's caliber. And I know for Rodriguez, the boxing really is at the forefront of the game plan, but Aldrich was able to outbox on the outside against Robertson. Miranda Maverick was able to outgrapple. Tyler Santos is kind of able to do everything. So we'll see if that happens in this matchup. I do like Rodriguez on the outside with some of that boxing, but if it's just Robertson for 3 rounds, closing the distance, making it boring, you could definitely see a fight where Robertson ends up grinding out a win in this one by decision, or if she's able to go out and get the submission. Majority of the fans at Fight Night Picks have Robertson in this one, 53%. So it does seem like a little bit of a hipster pick going with Piera in this matchup. And I got Piera by decision underneath that fist bump. So.
Yeah, I think her volume from the outside is going to be more than enough. Just Robertson doesn't have a lot to try to close the distance with her takedowns. It's a lot of just running in, trying to close the distance, get into the clinch, and then go for the legs. I don't think that's going to be good enough against Rodriguez.
We'll see if Robertson's able to do it again. Lost the first rounder last time out against Agapova, and then she was able to get a great win. Now, Matt, in this matchup, Ed Herman taking on Zak Cummings. The interviews before this fight, I broke them down in a couple of different ways. Ed Herman, helping out. He's training at American Top Team Portland. He's really trying to coach, helping with Fabiano Scherner. He has recently opened a gym as well. He's also started an MMA promotion. Ed Herman. Got a lot of stuff.
Well, you could learn a ton from a guy like Ed Herman. It's nice to see him going into coaching because he's forgot more about MMA than most people will ever learn.
A lot about living and a little about love.
Exactly. He's been down the Chattahoochee.
When you look at it for Ed Herman, though, I mean, the guy has really compiled a great run in the UFC, came in off The Ultimate Fighter Season 3, and got all the way to the finals against Kendall Grove. And Kendall Grove was a big success in the UFC for quite some time with that dyed red and black hair.
He had a wild body type. He was
did.
like Chet Holmgren.
It was something. But when you look at this one, Matt, I mean, for Zak Cummings, he had the offshoot of Glory MMA and Fitness. It's now Ignite Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. He's training at Factory X Muay Thai for this one. Dustin Jacoby, a training partner, was later on in this card. He touched on the fact that he's been training with some big-time wrestlers getting ready for the matchup, but it might be his last fight. And then I saw Cody Safdie today post a screenshot from Facebook where Zak Cummings' wife was looking for pictures and highlights of Zak's time in the UFC. So probably is a retirement fight for Zak Cummings.
That going in, though.
Probably a retirement fight for both of these guys, and Morphatrix alluding to it as well. It's Ed Herman's last fight in his contract, so I think it's kind of it for both of these guys. Now for Cummings,
perfect matchup, though. I think you'd agree.
Cummings hasn't fought at light heavyweight since he fought Ryan Jimmo for an MFC title way back years ago. And Ed Herman, he's progressed up to light heavyweight. He's gone, 4-1 in his last 5 fights?
He'll be the bigger guy in this matchup.
All at light heavyweight. I'm eager to see what we get out of both these guys. People didn't give a rat's behind about our breakdown of this fight, which is wild, because I really do like the matchup. But for Ed Herman,
you can't blame them,
though. He bites down on the mouthpiece and walks forward. And Zak Cummings is a guy that, even off the back foot, throws a lot with power, but it just matters on what's going to score in the judges' minds in this one. Cummings,
I think it could end by finish, though, if I'm being honest.
Cummings, the only fighter out of Kansas City on this one.
This is the weird thing about Zak Cummings. He has good pop. He's not a big fighter. He never has been in really any of the divisions he's fought in, which is weird because he's fighting at 205 now. But he does have good good pop on his shots off the back foot. And Ed Herman is a weird fighter because at this stage of his career, he fights a lot of prospects. He gets hit a lot. Then the prospect gets tired, and then he overtakes them in the second half of the fight. I'm not sure if that's going to be a strategy that can work against a guy like Cummings, who, for the most part, is just a fairly consistent fighter. Not really going to wow you with his volume at any point, but he's going to make his shots count, and I think that's what the important thing in this fight is going to be. So I see Cummings landing a lot of shots off the back foot, but if Ed Herman could just eat a bunch of power shots, slowly start to erode away at Zak Cummings, I wouldn't be surprised if he is able to get the win, but my pick is going to be Cummings. I think the accuracy off the back foot, I've said that about 6 times now because I think it is the key to this fight, is going to be a little bit too much. I think he is going to land some clean shots on Herman when Herman walks in.
There's a ton of questions on this one. I mean, Zak Cummings as recently as this fall, he had that herniated disc in his back. Sure. It was a really bad injury.
It's been a long layoff.
He's been out for about 3 years. 72% of the fans going with Cummings. I'll go with Cummings. But if you like Ed Herman in this one, Herman's the steadier guy in a lot of his fights. I don't think that's crazy to say. And Cummings, even out of these recent fights where he somehow found the knockdown blow, you talk about the fight against Trevin Giles, counter shot off of a weird takedown attempt. Then he's able to get the submission. Cummings is able to go out there against Steve Kirko and in the last second throw up that Hail Mary, lands a head kick, drops him in that one. So for me, I'll go with Zak Cummings. But if you like Ed Herman in this one, it's not crazy at all. Craig Hart, banger, but no name that even hardcores care about. MMA's not like baseball, and it's not like hockey. People don't care about the history in MMA at all.
Ed Herman and Zak Cummings, you can't, throw shade at people for... It's not like they're multiple-time All-Stars in their respective sports. It's a 42-year-old, a guy who hasn't fought in 3 years. Don't act like you're better than them.
No, I'm just saying, MMA fans don't like the history. When we look at this matchup, Matt, MMA fans, they don't necessarily like this one. And they don't like it because they think it should be on the main card. Now, I'll tell you why this one's on the prelims. It's so you watch the prelims. That's why it's on the prelims. Number 4 versus number 5. Royval coming off of that broken wrist. Mateusz Nicolau coming off of that giant win over Matt Schnell. And that's the crazy part. Both of these guys coming off of wins over Matt Schnell. Now, one was a fight of the night. The other one was a beatdown. It isn't necessarily the same thing. But when you look at a matchup like this, Matt, Royval, does he hit hard? Yes, he does. Does he have great jiu-jitsu? Yes, he does. Does he have good offensive wrestling? No, he doesn't. He gets taken down. But when you look at a guy like Brandon Royval, for all of the attributes and the lower attributes, I guess. When you look at a guy like Royval, the peaks and valleys are a lot higher than a guy than a guy like Mateusz Nicolau.
That's going to be the name of Royval's podcast, Lower Attributes with Brandon Royval. I guess that's all I can think about right now. So for Brandon Royval, it is interesting, and how they both fought Matt Schnell does kind of tell you both guys' styles. Royval's going to burn really hot looking for the finish, be it on the feet or on the mat with his stellar jiu-jitsu, and if he's able to hurt Nicolau and get him to the ground, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he is able to snatch up a neck, maybe an arm, and get the submission win. But Nicolau is the much steadier fighter, and he's a guy who does a decent job defensively on the feet. Now, when shots get through, can they hurt him? Of course they can, and that has been proven before, and I do think Royval has enough power to hurt Nicolau if he is able to land consistently on him. The difference is, I don't know if Royval's going to be able to do enough on the in-betweens outside of those big actions, because he's not a guy who's going to jab a ton from the outside. He'll jab and use his movement a lot, but he's not going to jab to then work his way into combinations, whereas Nicolau's going to have that high guard, he's going to chop you down with the leg kicks, he's going to use his boxing combinations, and I think that is enough to beat a guy like Royval. But all the people saying that this could be a fight of the night, without a doubt it could be. This is going to be an incredible fight.
I mean, Jason Ward saying raw dog for the win. Joe, Royval fights like the spirit of El Kakoi possesses him, and Nicolau fights are so technical, it's crazy fast. When you do look at a matchup like this fight I'm excited about, and then the one that they're kind of rumoring out there, the one between Figueiredo and Manel Kape, like those are fights that I need
and Moreno got confirmed. That's going to be an incredible fight.
Yeah, K. DeMercy saying Dustin Ortiz knocked out Nicolau. But you look at this guy, I mean, the record 19-3-1, he's definitely beaten good competition in the UFC. He's 4-0 since he's come back. So when you look at this matchup, I know Nicolau is about a 2-1 favorite. 66% at Fight Night Picks on our Instagram page have Nicolau to get the win. For me, I do like Nicolau. I like the consistency in his fights. Has he been finished? As K. DeMercy said, 100% he has. But for me, I just like Nicolau. I guess we haven't seen any big layoffs from Nicolau either. We haven't seen any major injuries either. Royval's had, the broken wrist. He's had the shoulder issues here, there, and everywhere. But out of it all, he's tougher than a $2 steak. And he's one of those guys that doesn't necessarily give up due to those injuries either. So I think this fight's going to be absolutely amazing. A branch above saying I like the underdog in this one, going with raw dog. But for me, I like Nicolau.
So do I. But again, incredible fight of flyweight.
Matt, a Saturday night. Kansas City is where the fights are taking place from. Almost 400 tuning in. Those numbers are going to go up. The likes, they're on you. You toss a like. It is definitely appreciated. We move on to our next matchup. I suck at picking both of these guys' fights. I'm 500 on picking Bill Algeo fights, and I'm 2-4 picking TJ Brown fights in the UFC. I picked Brown in every single fight except for his last one. Well, he won that one against Eric Silva, and that was a performance bonus where he came back as that one went on. So you really did like to see that out of TJ Brown. Again, another guy that doesn't quit on himself. His chin can elude him sometimes,
and that's what you're worried about in a matchup like this.
Yeah, and his cardio is good. Like when you look at a guy like TJ Brown, he's always there for the fight. The fight that he had against Jordan Griffin, the cardio kind of eluded him. But when you look at a guy like Brown, the takedowns are good, the wrestling's good, the jiu-jitsu's really good, both guys black belts. The striking's kind of one-dimensional when you compare it to a guy like Algeo, who will switch stances and throw it from different angles. But when I look at a guy like Algeo, I have a hard time picking his fights because there are a lot of peaks and valleys like Brandon Royval fights, and that's why in my own mind, I struggle more with Algeo fights than I do with Brown fights, if that makes any sense.
It is an interesting matchup for those reasons, but with Bill Algeo, I think he could hurt TJ Brown from the outside, like the opening minute, and probably look amazing, but TJ Brown has a big weakness in his game. He has big power on the feet, but he'll lead with his head and then throw the hook. He won't just throw the hook, and that's the big problem. If Algeo can And this is a big if. If he can stand on the outside, start to time some of those lunges, he can either land a knee up the middle or start to time some of those up the middle attacks, be it an uppercut, an elbow, whatever, and it could hurt Brown. But when Brown's moving forward with his strikes, he's going to be able to threaten with his wrestling as well, and I think that's what's going to open up not only his striking, but the grappling as well, because for as good of a grappler as Bill Algeo is, he can get held down by a stronger fighter, and not that there's no doubt in my mind, but between these two, they're both good on the mat. TJ Brown definitely has the wrestling advantage and 100% offensively in this matchup, so I do expect Brown to go for the wrestling quite a bit in this fight.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, a guy in Bill Algeo against Joanderson Brito, able to weather the storm against a guy like Spike Carlisle, weathering the storm out of those early takedown attempts. We'll see if Brown falls into that similar category. Both these guys kind of seem like main card Bellator fighters to me in that respect. Trying to cap the ceiling, it is difficult. When you look at Fight Night picks for this one, I assume most people, 63% going with Bill Algeo. And if you have a look at the odds in the matchup, Bill Algeo is a pretty big favorite. Open minus 140. Minus 200 right now. So Bill Algeo has gained throughout the week. The fans have him to win. Who do you have in the matchup?
I have TJ Brown ever so slightly. Again, I do think the wrestling is going to be enough. I'm worried about him on the feet, especially at range. I cannot stress that enough. But I think he's going to be able to get the takedown in this. And for as good as Algeo is off his back, he's not like Brian Ortega. It's not like, the floor is lava type stuff. So I do think Brown's going to be able to get the takedown. Do I worry about him on the feet? Of course I do. But I'm going to take the underdog in TJ Brown.
I'm going to go with TJ Brown as well with those takedown attempts. You saw Bill Algeo have a close competitive fight with a guy that was on his way out. It was a fight of the night against a former title challenger, Ricardo Lamas. You get that throwback coming. And Bill Algeo also has a performance bonus in the UFC over Herbert Burns, who the second round came a-coming and he came a-napping. Now, he didn't fall asleep, but he got sleepy.
He got
for me, I'm going to go with TJ Brown. But you guys, I mean, you definitely have a good read on this one. The fans going with Algeo. The odds are with Algeo. If you have Algeo, it is what it is. Matt, we move into kind of the part of the card that starts to get really interesting. Clay Guida, I mean, you look at him, 41 years old. In 2009, he had a fight of the year against Diego Sanchez. That is in the UFC's Hall of Fame, in the fight wing. So, Clay Guida's no joke. He's had a ton of fights in the UFC. He holds multiple records. I mean, I can go down through them. You don't need to hear them. But for Rafa Garcia, this is a guy, got to the top of the mountain over with Combate, came into the UFC with a ton of shine. Is he Cub Swanson's protege? Sure he is. I mean, he's gifted after all. And you did see it, what was it, last weekend? We had a fighter that was nicknamed by Cub Swanson out of an IHOP parking lot. That's earlier on this card. It's Groovy Lando Vannata. So Cub Swanson's definitely dabbled with a couple of these guys and helped them get ready for some of their fights. That sounded wrong. But for Rafa Garcia, Onyx Labs, he's trained up at pound for pound Muay Thai with Justin Houghton, who definitely has a lot of influence on a lot of really good fighters up there in Colorado. When you look at this matchup, though, Matt, Clay Guida, the little engine that could, and he never gives up.
But he doesn't have to take this fight. And that's the weird thing. Like, Clay Guida to me, I only want to see him fight other legends who are like kind of on their way out. Like, give me the Jim Miller fight 7 times. Not that I think Rafa Garcia is going to make the top 15. I had sort of, not that I said that in our prediction video, but I said, listen, Rafa Garcia is a guy you can sort of realistically imagine going on a bit of a run and getting close to the rankings. I don't know if Rafa Garcia is ever going to become a ranked fighter. This is arguably the best division in the UFC, but you get the idea. He is a guy of that skill set. He has good enough jiu-jitsu to where he can submit you. He has big power in his hands. And for Clay Guida, can he just do enough to not get finished? Because the activity is still there. He's not a guy who has gotten older and then his cardio has gotten worse. Cardio is still at the forefront of his game, and I think he can win this fight by using that cardio. I just think Rafa Garcia is kind of in a bit of a different lane right now, and I do think he can hurt Clay Guida on a lot of those in-betweens while Guida's trying to reach for takedowns and whatnot.
And I went back on this one because, originally at the start of the week, both of us with Rafa Garcia to get the win, and if you look at his 5-on-in in the matchups, he beat Mahashata's last time out, and his cardio looked good against a very young fighter in the game. Against Drakkar Klose, Klose is able to defend those third-round takedowns, keep it standing, and work in some of his striking. And Klose isn't necessarily the youngest guy in terms of MMA years.
He's a lot steadier on the feet,
with the injuries, with the concussion issues. The Grutzmacher fight was where Garcia had almost a 10-8 first round, and then he got tired and lost the second, lost the third. So if you do like Guida in the matchup, I saw Branch Above say it earlier, he's going to burp, and before that fight starts, I mean, who is it? Is it... what's Danny's name at Team Alpha Male? That was in the UFC. He's a coach there now. they're going to slap Clay Guida and get him ready for that one. Danny Castillo is the name that I'm thinking of. So Clay Guida's got a great opportunity in this one. I like Rafa Garcia, again, with the boxing, with his own takedowns. But if he starts to tire, Guida can definitely take over. We saw that in the Leonardo Santos fight for Guida as one example. So both of us with Garcia. Matt, Pedro Munoz is taking on Chris Gutierrez, two of the best leg kickers in all of MMA. And if you don't believe me, Pedro Munoz only threw leg kicks his last time out against Sean O'Malley. Wasn't going for the takedowns. He had that kind of awful no contest, the scratch cornea as it went on. But when you look at it for Munoz coming in taking on Chris Gutierrez, I mean, MMA math, he beat old Frankie Edgar on the retirement fight, main card of a pay-per-view.
What'd you have to do with that dirty on the way out?
Yeah, that was tough. And so Gutierrez, the rankings don't make any sense, but he gets to fight up one more time against Munoz, who lost to Frankie Edgar, though most people thought that Munoz won close. That main card.
It was close.
Was a close fight. I watched that one. You
can't just say most people. Like, that fight was as close as you can possibly get. Who are these most people?
They exist. MMA decisions.
But you can't just say most people. Like, you thought Munoz won. I thought Munoz won. But it was really close. If you had Edgar, I'm not going to disagree with you.
But when you look at this matchup, Matt, for Munoz, that guy's chin, like, he's one of those guys that when his career ends, he's probably going to go into slap fighting, and I won't watch it. He's got a chin. It's iron.
It is really good, but this is one of those fights that you kind of worry about, okay, is it a step too far? Like when Vicente Luque fought Jeff Neal, that was a fight where you go, okay, Luque's never been knocked out, has this all-time great chin, yes, he's been dropped, but never finished, but you knew, okay, if you're going to get knocked out by anybody, Jeff Neal's probably going to be the guy who's going to knock you out. Chris Gutierrez might not have the same punching power as a guy like Neal, but it's not unheard of or unthinkable to think, okay, he can put together a good game plan, chop down the legs of a guy like Munoz, strike from the outside well enough, because Munoz has gotten the label of being this really good boxer, and he is a good boxer, but he does require his opponent to be a very willing participant in the brawl for his own striking to really be accentuated, because on the outside, he doesn't jab a lot, he really is dedicated to those leg kicks from the outside, and a guy like Gutierrez is very big for the weight class, and he does check leg kicks quite effectively, so I'll be really curious to see how Munoz does close the distance, because from the outside, this should be all Chris, you would imagine. Now, if the leg kicks of Munoz do start to get to him, then it will be another story, but Munoz has this massive jiu-jitsu skill set in his back pocket. I just don't know if we're going to be able to see that, because the story about Munoz throughout his career is, and we talked about a lot of fighters this way, is he's got great jiu-jitsu, but the wrestling hasn't necessarily caught up to where the rest of his grappling is, so I do expect Munoz to probably shoot for some takedowns in the matchup, and it will be important, but I don't know if he'll be able to complete those takedowns, and that's why I do have Gutierrez.
Craig Hart hits up the super chat saying it's Gutierrez's fight to lose. When I look at this one, right down the line, this is the one where if the underdog won, it wouldn't surprise me one bit out of a guy like Pedro Munoz, because as I said at the start of the week, Chris Gutierrez gives it all away really early. He shows the flying knee. He shows the spinning back elbow or back fist. He throws a lot of kicks early on in his fights, and he doesn't necessarily string his boxing combinations together all that much. He's got kind of a tie stance, and it's really high, but he also stands really high, and his legs are out there to be kicked. Now, as you said, he counters him, turns out the shin, and it usually kind of deters his opponents from throwing that.
This could get so gross the more I'm thinking about it. Like, if Pedro Munoz and Chris Gutierrez just keep on checking each other's leg kicks in the middle, I don't really want to hear that noise just over and over again.
81% of the fans have Gutierrez in this one at Fight Night Picks. Alex Harris, bro, Munoz has the Chris Lieben chin. He isn't going down from regular punches from Chris. He ate O'Malley's cross. He's going to be fine until the knees and the head kicks start. Again, I do have a really hard time on this one. I know the odds suggest Gutierrez. I know the fans suggest Gutierrez. I have Gutierrez ever so slightly, but I'm right on the line. I think this is going to be an amazing fight on the main card. And I know, Matt, like, I'm going to be watching the Jays for as long as they go on. I'm going to be watching a lot of baseball today, but this is one...
NBA playoffs, Craig.
I've got my eyes locked in on this fight. I think it's going to be an
incredible
amazing
fight. Oh, without a doubt, because it is a step up in competition for Chris Gutierrez, but he's been able to look pretty good on every other step up in competition. So, again, I said this earlier on when Malone Hart sent us the super chat. It was, hey, if you beat a guy like Pedro Munoz, like, you're only fighting in, maybe not main events of fight nights, but you get the idea. Co-main event slots, potentially a 5-round atmosphere next. So, only great things happen to you if you're able to beat a guy like Munoz. But there's a reason great things happen to you after you beat Munoz. It's really difficult to beat him in the first place. So, incredible fight at 135.
All right, Matt. Then we get into one of the more interesting fights. The phone finally fell. That all rhymed. But Tanner Bozer's taking on Iwan Kutsalaba. Iwan outweighed him by 3 pounds. the former heavyweight. He outweighed the former heavyweight by 3 pounds. Boser coming in at 203. You have to think, I mean, the weight just fell off at a point. And he talked about it with JHK on the All-Star MMA. That was one of the interviews that we referenced a lot. Not necessarily a page out of Joe Rogan's book, but deer meat, the primary source of protein and iron for Tanner Boser. So when you look at this fight, Matt, Tanner Boser, first fight at light heavyweight in years and years and years. If I'm not mistaken, 2015 was his last light heavyweight bout. And that was one of 2 submission wins for Boser on his record. So we'll see if he's able to go out there, get the submission. We'll see if the toughness, the chin's able to kind of hold up at 203. We'll see if the cardio is able to hold up, because Boser is one of those guys that's in the fight for as long as it lasts.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I do have Tanner Boser. I think we were split on this at the start of the week.
We were, yeah.
I do have Boser because I think he's the steadier fighter between the two. Now, could Pudilova go out there, blast him with a big hook, and knock him out with ground and pound on the feet as Craig is on all fours looking for his phone right now?
Got him.
Yes, he easily could, but I don't think he is a steady enough fighter to go out there and win a decision against a fighter like Boser. So for that reason, I just think Boser has more methods to win. I don't think he is this big knockout puncher like some people thought he was on that weird little 3-fight run he had at heavyweight, but I do think he's the steadier fighter between the two, and that's why I think he's going to get the win.
If you look at this fight, I mean, Ion Cutelaba is going to win it in the first round, or at least be steady with the takedowns, and his cardio has to withstand. If not, Boser's going to win a decision or get a late finish in this. And that's how I see it. I see Amawayne Kerr with the super chat. I feel great about Boser, and also saying I love Boser round 2. When you look at the fan vote, it's close. 59% at Fight Night Picks going with Tanner Boser to get the win. If I'm not mistaken, he's a decent favorite in the matchup, slight favorite in the matchup. Cutelaba open plus 140. Cutelaba's minus 131. And if we have a look, I was wrong. Boser open minus 160. He's a plus 107.
Give me another dog.
That is interesting. I love when they say my name, LMAO. Am I mispronouncing it? If I am, you let me know. OJ saying, what's up, boys? A lot of people heading on over there in the chat, letting us know who they have in the matchup. For me, I like Cutelaba with those early takedown attempts. Tanner Boser's shown takedown defense in the UFC. It's kind of been up and down. And as I mentioned the last time out against Nascimento, did he rally in that fight? Did he land the better power shots?
Did his opponent outweigh him by 40 pounds?
His first takedown defender that he tried to defend, he just threw punches to defend it, and that was it. There was no attempt to defend the takedown. So for me, I like Cutelaba in this one. Now, do I like his sambo? In some fights. Do I like Murzakanov in the next fight because Cutelaba's sambo wasn't as good? Yeah. But when you look at this matchup, it is pretty difficult. I mean, Boser, round 2, round 3, or by decision, Cutelaba in the first round. I don't necessarily like to pick guys to win in the first round, but I like Cutelaba in this one. And then we get to the really interesting fight at light heavyweight. And when we're talking about fighters that are just on the fringes of the top 15, well, there's not a lot of light heavyweights, so it's pretty much anybody that doesn't have a number.
Dustin Jacoby's just like, you shall not pass. That's basically what his job is at the light heavyweight division.
And so Dustin Jacoby, his last time out, it was the first loss in a really long time. Craig Hart, fear the deer. Nice. Boser for the win with the deer and the basketball. That's a good one right there. When you look at this fight, Matt, I mean, Dustin Jacoby fought very good kickboxers with glory. He lost Alex Pereira. He lost to one of the great Canadians in Simon Marcus. Exactly. So he does have some of those losses. Morphatrix. Azamat looked rough on the scale. He was sort of holding his leg, walking to the scale, looked a bit out of it mentally, and then almost limped away. Worrisome. Malone Hart with the super chat. Never forget Cutelaba getting free hits on Cannonier and not getting a knockout. Remember Cutelaba having that fight against Glover Teixeira? Remember the time that Ed Herman beat Glover Teixeira? These are all things that really happen. We thank you for the super chat, Malone Hart.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Morphatrix, and thank you, Craig Hart, with all of those super chats. So, I will say this for Murzakanov. Don't like that he shaved the hair. That's a weird look. He looks weird bald. And secondly, the cupping, he did that his last time out, and he got that finish over Devin Clark. So I'm not scared of the cupping in this one. But for Murzakanov, like, when do we awaken the beast? That's really the question in most of his fights.
Because Jacoby is steady at 205. And normally you think, okay, big striker, got decent power. They don't really carry that power late. But Jacoby's a guy who's not going to throw with too much volume and kind of get over complicated, if you will, with his combinations. And I think it will be interesting to see how Murzakanov does deal to the pressure of Jacoby. And honestly, I think this fight you can maybe oversimplify to a point and say whoever's moving forward is probably going to be winning this fight. Because if Jacoby's able to push him back and use his combinations, go to the legs, throw his boxing combos. He could easily win this fight just by getting downhill and using his striking. But if Azamat is able to mix in his kind of looping striking from the outside, he does lunge in a lot, and that's what does worry me in a matchup against a guy like Jacoby. But if he's able to disguise some of those lunging in strikes with some takedowns, he could definitely out MMA a guy like Jacoby.
When you look at the rankings, somebody had asked, is Jacoby ranked? He is now. So they switched the rankings around. Jacoby's 13th, Murzakanov is 15th. So they like switching up those rankings throughout the week. Herman saying, have you tried Portuguese-style poutine at Mapul Mouillé? No. I'm trying to think. I was going to go to... I can't remember the name. Armin, you leave it with me, and I'm going to remember the Portuguese chicken spot I was going to go to about a month ago, and I didn't go, but I've only heard good things about Mapul Mouillé. When you look at this one, Austin saying Murzakanov has heavy hands. He does, and that Sambo lineage out of him, he kind of bounces, he waits, he doesn't even throw a jab, he throws his left hand as a straight punch or as a hook, and once he has you hurt, then he starts to go to the body and he makes it fun.
I worry about what it is going to look like when he fights like a Jamal Hill type, because Jamal Hill's a guy who, if you do just lunge in from the outside and not really set it up with a jab or with some of those takedown attempts, he's going to hit you with so many power shots down the middle. But I think this is a good kind of, not first step for Murzakanov, but we're going to learn a lot when he fights Jacoby, because Jacoby fights like some of the guys at the higher end of the division. He just doesn't necessarily have some of the other intangibles of them. So I think Jacoby's a great guy to fight sort of on your way up the ranks.
I will give it to Armin. I'll tell you this. We did go to Atwater Market here a month and a half ago and had the Portuguese tarts. They were sick, and that's a great market. When I look at this one, Matt, I thought about it all week. I was on the fence at the start of the week. I'm switching the pick. I'm going with Dustin Jacoby in the matchup. I think that outside striking is going to carry him in this one, and he has better movement when it's at striking distance than Devin Clark does, and then a guy like Tafon Chukwe with his Muay Thai background. It was just kind of the wait, and then finally it was Murzakanov showing that flying knee and landing it. So for me, I'm going to switch the pick. Can Jacoby grapple? No, not at all. Nope. He struggles with grapplers, especially as the fight starts off.
He can defend takedowns against the cage a little bit, but it's one of those things that once you do start to chain wrestle, you'll be able to get him down.
So for me, I am going to go with Jacoby in this one. Corey saying, yeah, Prince kickboxing champion has pillows his fist. Did you watch his first round against Dawoon Jung where he finished him? Are you kidding me?
He cracked him.
That's a bad comment there, Corey. I apologize.
He just doesn't overthrow. Don't get that confused for not being a big power puncher. Jacoby just doesn't throw from the hip like he's Vanderlei. Like, he can get guys out of there if they show defensive deficiencies, but I like Jacoby in the matchup just for how steady he is, and I just think he's going to be able to land a lot more in terms of volume.
All right, Matt, so we move into the co-main event of the evening.
What a fight we have.
And we have Edson Barboza and Billy Quarantillo. Now, Matt, I don't know if anybody watched PFL last night, but I got myself jacked up. I brought the computer around. I was showing my wife and the dogs. They weren't really into it. But I said, hey, guys, Olivier Aubert-Mercier is fighting Shane Burgos, and I think this fight is amazing. And did Shane Burgos fight both of these guys?
He did.
And how did he make out against Edson Barboza?
It's legitimately difficult to watch.
And how did he make out against Billy Q?
A great fight.
It was a great fight. And so I thought, hey, this fight against OAM is going to be great. The fight sucked. And OAM looked great in it. But the fight sucked, and Burgos is tentative, and 155 is not his weight class, and he doesn't look big at 155. But when I look at this matchup, Matt, for Billy Q, he's a fight of the night waiting to happen, never taking a step back, bites down in the mouthpiece. And for Edson Barboza, we know him for all of the kicks. We know him for the fight against Dan Hooker, Terry Edom putting him on a poster. His wrestling defense struggled mightily against Bryce Mitchell. I don't know what he thought they were going to do.
But also, like, Bryce Mitchell is that good at grappling. Like, if you're not a primary grappler with your background, you're probably getting out-grappled by Bryce Mitchell.
So in this one, Matt, and I know, again, Edson, it was what? Right hook, left straight. That was what dropped him. And then he popped right back up, only to get taken down by Mitchell. We'll see how this one plays out. I see Branch above saying another pop and popcorn fight. I'm pretty well right down the middle. I mean, if it's just a pure kickboxing matchup, Edson's got a great shot.
He wins without a doubt.
Yeah, exactly. But Billy's got that kind of wrestling in his back pocket.
Well, and even if they just strike, this isn't kickboxing. Like, that's the difference. Billy can clinch. He can make it ugly. He can wear Edson Barboza down, because Barboza is one of the craziest athletes we've ever seen in MMA. He is. He has fast twitch. He has surprising power because he looks like he huffs and puffs after the first round, but he still carries his power very late. It comes down to, for me at least, how many of those accumulation type strikes can Edson land in the fight? Because in the third round, Billy's going to win it. He just is. That's his fighting style. I think Edson with his kick-heavy attack is going to wear down. He normally does lose the third round, unless he, like the Khabib example was the one I brought up, just because it shows the heart a guy like Edson Barbosa has. But you bring up the Mitchell knockdown, that's not even the most telling one. Cowboy Cerrone dropped him with a jab like 7 years ago, and I gotta be honest, from that point on, I've always sort of wondered about Edson Barbosa.
The thing that weirds me out in this fight, though, Matt, is Billy in this fight from second 1 to second, I don't know, what would it be? 300? Like, for Billy Q, is he in it in the first round? Does he give away the first round? Is Edson able to go out there, play peekaboo on the outside, and land? Because we saw Barboza against Giga Chikadze have a lot of success early on.
I think we're going to have high power on Edson landing big shots, but I think Billy Q's going to match that with his own volume, and that's the thing. I think the rounds will be very close, round 1 and round 2. It's just, if Edson's not able to land enough of those consistent attacks to the legs and to the body of Billy Q, his cardio, I think, will stay, or at least the output will stay on a decent rhythm, because for Edson, if he does start to overthrow with some of his boxing combinations, he'll miss big. And I know I've complimented his boxing because I think it sort of gets swept under the rug because everyone gets all caught up in his kicks, but his boxing's really good. The problem is he'll overthrow his combinations sometimes, especially that big left hook. And if he does start to find himself overthrowing, overcommitting, getting off balance, that's when Billy will start to close the distance, eliminate some of those kicks, really wear on him, get his own boxing combinations going, because Billy's going to try to get chest to chest and land a lot of those uppercuts, get dirty with his boxing. And I think if he's able to do that, he does have the cardio to win this matchup.
57% of the fans at Fight Night picks out Quarantillo. So again, the fans are right down the middle. I'd really like to hear, again, who you have in this matchup. Seems like it's kind of all over the place. Both of us with Quarantillo in the matchup.
So close, though.
It is a really, really close fight. And then that takes us, again, they do back-to-back light heavyweight, back-to-back featherweight. The main event, Arnold Allen's second career 5-round fight. His last time out against Calvin Kattar was a 5-rounder for Max Holloway. Like, he was on his way. He was well on his way, like they say in that Pop Smoke song. Like, he was well on his way, and then Alexander Volkanovski came along, and now Volkanovski's looked at as the next great GOAT at featherweight, and Max Holloway's out of the conversation. But when you look at a matchup like this, we saw Holloway. He gets beaten by Volkanovski twice, and then he goes out and he beats Calvin Kattar and he beats Yair Rodriguez, and they're wonderful fights, and then he loses to Volkanovski. All 3 scorecards, 50-45. Is this the great reset? And he fights another one of those contenders and acts as the great gatekeeper?
How good do you have to be for your reset to be Arnold Allen, who hasn't lost in, like, years and years? Like, he's 19-1. Like, that's how good Max Holloway is. His reset's not just fighting some random guy we've never heard of. Like, you're fighting Arnold Allen, who has been on an absolute tear as of late.
His last loss was in, 2014 to Marcin Rodzek, who was on the Ultimate Fighter 22. Wasn't able to get past guys like Julian Erosa and Artem Lobov, the season favorites. Or Billy Q, he was on that season.
I don't know if that's selling Arnold Allen appropriate. Like, and he gets better every fight. My point is, Arnold Allen, I think, does belong in that conversation of top featherweights. It's been really difficult for him to go out there and prove that, because he has a win over Calvin Kattar. He looked good against Calvin Kattar, but that's not a fight that you can go to and point at and be like, oh, he convincingly dominated him.
Got torched in the comments this week because they said that Arnold Allen destroyed Calvin Kattar.
No, he looked really good up until that knee injury. Like, I thought the kicks were landing. He was doing a good job defensively, because we know what it is with Kattar. Once he gets downhill, once he gets comfortable, there's not a lot you can do. The boxing combinations just keep on coming. Max Holloway has the footwork to stay away and land his own combinations, but not a lot of other fighters do in this division. I think the kicks and the leg kicks of Arnold Allen are something that's going to be a big deal, because Max Holloway's a guy who can fight from both stances. He can fight for a long time from one stance and a long time from the other, but him at his best and at his most efficient is switching between the two. So if Allen can compromise one of the legs to make him just a southpaw or just an orthodox fighter, it's going to make the fight much easier for Allen, but it's still a difficult fight for him, still fighting a one stance all the way.
Do you think that Max Holloway at all in his life, he's sitting down with like Yancy Medeiros, they're watching fights, do you think they've ever been on YouTube and they go, Allen, Pacer Allen? Do you think they've ever seen Pacer Allen fight before?
Maybe?
Pacer Allen, that guy is jacked.
He is huge. For Max Holloway, though, I do worry about how much he has left in the tank. Like, I saw a Twitter thread. This guy had like 2,000 likes on it. I don't remember what it was, but he was like, Max Holloway's only 31. He's just hitting his prime. That's not how sports work. Like, yes, in hockey, like, you know, you'll get better 27 to 32 and whatnot, but like, in MMA, you get hurt and you get damaged every fight. If you get started early, your prime ends early most of the time. Not a lot of guys get started at 19 and fight till they're 39. Manny Pacquiao is an outlier. He is not the average. So, for Holloway, I do worry about how much he has left in the tank. If Allen does get him hurt, like, Dan Hooker hurt, and he just starts throwing that crazy volume, maybe he could hurt and finish Max Holloway, but I'm going to rely on the footwork and the volume of Holloway to get the win.
Hey guys, Max Holloway's 31 years old. And he's third all time in UFC fight time with 6 hours, 30 minutes, and 47 seconds.
And you don't get a reputation. Like, Max Holloway when's the last boring Max Holloway fight? Can you think of one? Like, the Frankie Edgar one wasn't amazing, but it wasn't like a terrible fight. But all of Max Holloway fights are fairly memorable and are of that fight of the night variety. So it's not out of question to say Max Holloway might not have a crazy long time left at the top of the division.
Yeah, and I do see that. Like, Alex Zaragoza, you're going to get a little bit of flack on that by saying that Arnold Allen's a nobody. I think that's a really silly thing to say. But for me, I mean, Arnold Allen, we kind of talked about this at the start of the week. We talked about it off camera before the show started. Max Holloway's 0-3 in the UFC against Southpaws. Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. I guess Conor McGregor's sprinkled in the middle. The first Poirier fight, they're very young. The McGregor fight, he decided to wrestle and mixed it up with the striking. The third one, which would be the second Poirier fight, Poirier put it on him with those combinations, stood in with his power shots, and Poirier has a Philly shell type of defense with his boxing. Arnold Allen has the same thing out of that southpaw stance. It's just, again, I've seen Poirier go a hard, deep 5 rounds. Arnold Allen, I haven't. I've seen him get tired in a third round against Sadiq Youssef, and maybe that plays tricks on the mind because Arnold Allen...
I don't think they box in that set. Like, Arnold Allen doesn't throw the combinations Poirier does. Poirier will throw a 7-punch combination and go same side 3 times on it. Like, Arnold Allen might have the defense, but he doesn't throw the offensive boxing that Poirier does at all. He is much more reliant on the kicking part of his game than Poirier is.
It'll be really interesting to see what we get out of this one. I'm going to throw it on over at Fight Night Picks for the total votes. 60% off Holloway. Here in the YouTube community, over in the chat, 74% going with Max Holloway. I like Max Holloway in the matchup, but the trouble that I have is, again, Holloway keeping his hands tight. He could get hit up the middle. He's heavy on his lead leg. Arnold Allen likes to throw a lot of kicks. Southpaws have caused Max Holloway issues in the past. If Arnold Allen got the win, I mean, Mascot TV saying second round finish for
Dustin
Arnold
Poirier
Allen.
caused Max Holloway. Like, just saying Southpaw, I think the sample size is too limited. It's one fighter who took him down the first fight and there was no striking
at all. It's tough
at all.
when you have over 20 fights in the UFC and only 3 against Southpaws.
But it's the one fighter who took him down the first fight. Conor McGregor out-wrestled him. It's not like the Southpaw striking played any factor. So Max Holloway lost to a Southpaw one time in striking, is what we could confidently say. Like, I don't think just saying that is truth. I think the sample size is far too limited because it's one fighter who has all-time great boxing who just so happens to be a southpaw.
So both of us going with Max Holloway in the matchup. And again, we're rounding out the show. If you've ever tuned in with Fight Night Picks, !kicks, we're going to rip through all of these fights one more time. If you could toss us a like, it's definitely appreciated. We can zip that video right up there. And then, of course, I mean, we talked about it earlier on, and I'll turn down the video's audio. But Pavlovich taking on Blades is the main event next weekend. You can look forward to that one. Pavlovich has just been dusting everybody of late.
God.
And Curtis Blades, I mean, his last time out, like the Tom Aspinall wins, the wins over Volkov, like Curtis Blades has just struggled against guys like Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis. So a really interesting fight next weekend in that main event. But Matt, we start off this card. Joselyne Edwards missed the weight. She's taking on Lucie Pudilova. I could see Edwards winning this fight. I had Pudilova, but it's a tough one.
You worked too hard for your money to put it on this fight, but I had Pudilova to win.
All right, Matt. We move into the next one. Phillips taking on Bolanos. If Phillips wins by knockout, no surprise. If Bolanos wins by knockout, no surprise. I'll go Bolanos, but it's an interesting fight.
I have Bolanos. It should be a fun fight for as long as it lasts.
All right. Then we have Brasil versus Gomes. I'm going Brazil.
I also have Brazil.
Both out of Brazil. Vannata taking on Zellhuber. Going with Vannata.
I have Zellhuber.
All right, Matt. In the next one, Robertson taking on Rodriguez. Going Rodriguez.
I also have Rodriguez.
Roll those R's. In the next one, Herman taking on Cummings. Don't feel good about it. Going with Zak Cummings.
I also have Zak Cummings, but he has been away for a very long time.
All right. Then we have Royval versus Nicolau. Going Nicolau.
Also have Nicolau.
James F. Shout out the Canada lads. The Canada lads. Bill Algeo taking on TJ Brown. Going Brown.
Brown, but Algeo could easily win this fight.
Yeah, 100%. Guida versus Garcia. Going with Garcia.
Also have Garcia.
Then we have Munoz versus Gutierrez. Going with Gutierrez.
I have Gutierrez, but this should be an incredible fight.
It should. Bozer Kutselaba. Let's go Kutselaba.
I got Bozer in the new division.
The switch of the pick. Both of us going with Dustin Jacoby in this one.
I like his striking from the outside.
All right. Teabagging times and floor seats would be fire for a Holloway card. I bet people are on their feet. Barboza versus Billy Q. Hopefully they're on their feet for this one.
Like, yeah, is this the best co-main main event fight night in like a year and a half? Like, I cannot genuinely tell you the last time we have had two fights of this caliber.
It's better than Barboza Ige. I'm more excited about this one.
Oh, this is an incredible fight. Like, that's the thing. There is, like, these both have the potential to not just be fight of the night, but I genuinely mean fight of the year type quality. So this is a great fight night card for anybody who's even like a casual observer of the sport. They're going to be blown away by this fight, but I do have Billy Quarantillo in this one.
I feel like the Paris of the Plains in Middle America, there's going to be a lot of woos throughout there in the octagon. Both of us with Billy Q in this one. And in the main event, Max Holloway taking on almighty Arnold Allen. Going with Max Holloway in this one.
I live a life I deserve. Blessed. I have Max Holloway.
Prince Vegeta's son, 145 or 135, which is better? 135 right now, all day.
I don't think there's a right answer, honestly. Like, they're probably... I think 135, 45, and 55 all have a genuine argument of being the best division in the UFC. It's just your flavor of the day, really. So, yeah, I'll say 135, though.
Make sure you check it out. Coming up for next weekend, you do have Pavlovich, who's taking on Blades. Make sure you check out that video. You toss us a like. It is much appreciated. If you haven't watched it, keeping score... The Forgotten Chosen one about Gaston Bolanos, his rise through Bellator and Muay Thai. You guys have checked that out all week, and that is certainly appreciated. More of those episodes coming out in the near future. A big-time day in sports. The NBA, the NHL playoffs, baseball's kicking it off with Jackie Robinson Day. There's a lot going on. We're here for the fights, so again, make sure you check it out coming up next weekend. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.